for everyone else, including myself. So you can also reflect back any points that you liked so far in the session. Okay, so we'll enter into today's session, which is the second session. Is what is the self? What is my real identity? Who am I? I mean, the interesting thing that I just thought occurred to me. Everybody in this world is, self-interested. Anybody here who's not self-interested? Okay. Everybody. We're all self-interested, right? We're all self-interested. But if I don't know what is the self, then my whole calculation of what is my self-interest will go completely wrong. If I don't know what is self, my whole calculation, if right in the beginning of a mathematical problem, my whole understanding of the problem is wrong. I can do how many ever calculations I can after, starting working on the problem, but my answer will be wrong. Because my whole premise of understanding of the problem itself is wrong. So my whole calculation and arriving at a particular solution will be wrong. So if I don't understand what is the self, then my whole calculation about what really is my self-interest, what really will benefit me, what really is good for me, all those calculations can be wrong. So this session will actually explore the idea of what is the true self or what is the real self. So quick recap, I know some of you are new, but people who are they have come for, I can see some of the faces who have come last session. So you are going to do the recap. I'm not going to do the recap. So you are going to do the recap. So recap, what did we discuss? Any one point that you remember from last session, you can quickly mention it and then we can collect all the points and then move on. What point you remember from last session? Yes?
We're all looking for happiness and it starts from within.
Yeah, very nice. Nice point. We talked about how we are all looking for happiness. But the happiness that's available externally, we talked about happiness at multiple levels. The level of senses, at the level of, the subtle, at the mind, and then at the level of the spirit. So we talked about this, happiness at different levels. We are generally conditioned to seek happiness in this world by engaging the senses with the sense objects. But then we generally not satisfied with that experience, alright? But the experience, what does it do? It actually always falls, it's temporary, it's fleeting in nature. I mean, we talked about, I don't remember exactly, which session I talked about, which desert, but we talked about Kaju, right? Kaju cut. Now, how much can you eat? How much happiness can you get, right? Of course, you can get some sensation for a few seconds, and the sensation can remain with you for a few minutes, but then after that, it disappears. Right? So the happiness is short-lived. The material happiness is short-lived. It's shallow. It doesn't really satisfy us the deep satisfaction that we are looking for, and it leaves us wanting more. So these are the characteristics. But the real happiness is we want to find happiness at the spiritual level. So for that we have to look inside. We have to, it's an inside job. We have to work on ourselves to experience that higher taste or experience that happiness at a spiritual level. Very nice. Thank you, Gayatri. Any other points anyone remembers?
The story of king and his 4 wives.
You can be a little louder so that everybody can hear.
So there was a story about the king and his 4 wives, and to that story we learned like our entire life we neglect our soul, and while we run behind the other materialistic thing, but the soul is the only thing that matters the most, and that will go along with us.
Yeah, very nice, beautiful. Thank you. So we spent some time discussing about the story, and we understood how, the thing that really comes along with us that we need to nourish and cherish is our soul. Yeah. Any other points? Otherwise, we can keep waiting. And then the dinner will get postponed.
So, you taught another. There was one picture of the person who was hanging from the tree, and he was getting the honey. So,
Right.
we are just thinking about the momentary happiness, and we forget about the other problems, the future, past, and what is just immediate problems.
Yeah, that's right. So many problems are tormenting us in the present, and and there are karmic reactions coming from the past, and there is also karmic reactions in the future waiting for us, but we remain oblivious to everything. And then we are interested in licking or tasting the honey, the drops which are coming from the beehive from the top. Very nice. Others, any points? Like
common characteristics of problem which everyone faces.
very nice. You want to elaborate on that, Anil?
I don't remember.
Yeah, there are 3 criteria. Yes. You are the same thing or?
No, so there were 2 different kinds of problems. The sort of normal problems, and then the true problems, which were like things you cannot escape. Death, childbirth, disease and age, right?
Very nice. Let's give a round of applause. Good job. Yeah, there is a difference between temporary problems or immediate problems and the real problems of life, as Anirudh was alluding to the fact that the real problems of life has these criteria, that is common to all. Nobody wants them, and no, everybody gets it, and nobody can avoid it. Yeah, these are the criteria for a real problem. Definition of a real problem. Everybody has problems. Problemism itself has 2 categories: immediate problems and real problems. Nice, very nice. Yes.
What differentiates human beings from animals is the ability to inquire.
Very nice. Yeah. What is your name?
Revati.
Yeah, Revati. That's a very nice point. So, we discussed about among all the species of life, how the human form of life is very special, and how they are special because they can inquire into higher truth. I think we covered up almost all the points, right? Maybe we missed a little bit here and there, but we covered. Any final thing, or I can go into the. Okay. So, Divya ji, she mentioned about this picture. You can see there's dangers all around, and of course the rats. The white and the black rat represents what? Day and night. And all our we are basically, as we are aging, we are marching towards death, but completely oblivious to all the things that's happening. And of course there is Krishna, the Paramatma, who's within our heart. Is giving a helping hand. He is trying to save us. He is trying to rescue us, but we are completely in ignorance of everything, and then we are trying to get the drop of honey which is coming from the top of the tree. Yeah, we discussed about the real problems of life. Madhya very nicely explained how the real problems of life is birth, death, old age, and disease. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Dosha, Anudarshanam from the Bhagavad Gita words. Body is the acronym here by our dear Shyam Prabhu. And then we talked about the humans and animals, and then finally, we ended last week's session. Let's inquire, right? Now tell me what do you observe here in this picture? Is everybody able to see this picture? What do you observe here in this picture? Cage, okay. Bird. The bird is caged.
The lady's trying to dust it.
The bird is caged. What is the lady doing?
Trying to dust the cage.
Dusting the cage, and she is trying to keep the cage very, clean. Spick and span.
Is the bird dead?
Yeah, Prashant is saying, is asking the question, is the bird dead? Nadia, yes?
She's caring more about the cage's presentation than the bird inside it.
Yeah, very nice. She is caring more about the cage than the bird. Of course, she should be doing the reverse, right? She should be caring more about the bird. Of course, she should also keep the cage clean I have nothing against, cleanliness. Right? But more important than the cage is she has to keep the bird well nourished, and she has to keep the bird alive. The bird is almost dying, and probably she has not taken care of the bird for many days, and probably she has not fed the bird for many days, but she is busy caring about the cage. And so this picture also represents our modern civilization. This picture also represents our modern civilization. That's why we see so many anomalies in this world. This represents our modern civilization. How? How does it represent our modern civilization? Yes.
Because we care more for our body than we care for our soul.
Yeah. What is your name?
Aksha.
Avsha. So Avsha, very beautifully said, because we care more for our body than our soul. I mean, we don't even have the awareness that we are the soul. We don't even have that knowledge that which is the essence of the discussion today. We don't even have that knowledge and awareness. So what to speak of nourishing and caring for it, right? Nice point, Avsha. Let's give a. So this is how the modern civilization is running, where we actually care about the demands of the body, the demands from the mind, but then we are forgetting to nourish our true self. We're forgetting to nourish the soul. So that's why we find so much anomaly in this world, because in spite of so much material comfort and advancement and so on and so forth, of course I have nothing against technological advancement, but still people are more dissatisfied, more anxious, more unhappy, and more stressed out, and so on and so forth. So the anomaly we see in this world is reflecting because we are running our civilization is very similar to this picture. So we'll start with today's topic. Thank you all for a wonderful, recap. It's beautiful. So today's topic, so what is the self? Of course, you all know the answer. I don't have to. But it's a very fundamental topic. It's a very important topic. Even though the answer is very simple, but we have to. Of course, there is a difference between Gyan and Vigyan. There is difference between knowledge and realization. Even though we all understand, because we are all coming from India or an Indian background or a Vedic background, we all understand that that I am Atma or I am soul. We all have that understanding, at least the theoretical understanding. So one thing is the theoretical understanding, but another thing is to realize it. That's a different thing. So even though it's a very basic, fundamental knowledge, it's a very important knowledge to understand. So we'll start with Arjuna's predicament. Arjuna was actually on the battlefield. And what was Arjuna going through in the battlefield?
He doesn't want to.
He doesn't want to fight. Yes.
He's very confused.
He's very confused. Yeah, he's not, all those answers are right, but he's confused, he doesn't want to fight, and he's actually going through a crisis. He wants to run away from his duties. He wants to run away from the battlefield. Yes. And think about it, everybody is watching. There are millions of soldiers. And then he's telling Krishna, please take the chariot right in the middle. And then where does Krishna take the chariot to? Right in front of Bhishma and Drona. And then right in front of people he is most attached to, most affectionate to. So Krishna takes the chariot right in front of them. So what? He is basically facing his own attachments. By Krishna taking him, right in front of Bhishma and Drona, Krishna is forcing him to face his own attachments. So on one side is his call for his duty. On another side is his attachments to his own kinsmen. So now, of course, both have their values. So now Arjuna becomes very confused. Not only confused, he becomes very broken-hearted. And you can see here, in the next few verses, we'll talk about Arjuna's condition. Arjuna is a very excellent, he is a very capable warrior. He has never lost a battle. Just previously, just few, maybe, before this Kurukshetra battle, he also fought another battle. Right? The Virat Desh. And then he defeated all the Kauravas. He was actually undefeated champion. Arjuna was an undefeated champion. He was the best student. we were talking about this yesterday, how Arjuna was, Dronacharya asks him, all the students, what do you see? And everybody says, there is a target of a parrot doll on the tree. In the Mahabharata, this story is being discussed now. All the different students are saying, I see the tree. Some people are saying, I see the mountains behind. And everybody is saying different answers. But Arjuna says that I only see the parrot. I don't see anything else. So he's such a top student. And then such a warrior. And then he was able to win the hand of Draupadi by looking at the reflection of the fish. And then he was able to shoot the arrow. Can you do that, Adya? Looking at the reflection down and then shooting the arrow to the target. So he was so capable, he was so accomplished, he was such a great warrior, and he was undefeated until this time. Even he had battles, some of the battles were with the Devatas, and he was not, Devatas were not even able to defeat Arjuna. He was so powerful and also filled with divine qualities. Right? Such a great personality. But then right in the battle, the middle of the battlefield, he breaks down. So, when your mind flips out, when your mind, stops cooperating, all your great accomplishments and degrees, and how much ever the skills that you can solve your problems on paper will not come to aid. So what will come to aid is actually spiritual knowledge and spiritual connection. So that's what Arjuna's condition is in the battlefield. We can read few verses. So I can read these few verses. Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, this is from chapter 1. Seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Anybody's experienced mouth drying up? Yeah? When? Huh? Yeah, when we are very tense, then actually the mouth dries up. Any examples? Exams, interviews. Yeah. So of course Arjuna's symptoms were even more severe. Not only his mouth was drying up, his body was quivering, he was shaking. Such a great mighty warrior. What has happened to him? It's because facing his own attachments. And the mind now suddenly is not cooperating. So he is quivering, and then he says, my whole body is trembling, my hair is standing on end, and my bow Gandiva is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. So he continues, I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna. So he's having a complete, of course it's a very intense crisis. It's a very intense crisis because, when one is called to, to basically confront one's own, deep attachments, then one goes through all these different experiences. Yeah, so that's what Arjuna is actually going through. And one of the reasons he's going through is, of course, one of the reasons is attachment. And that attachment is for his kinsman, right? And but why was he afraid? Why was the attachment bothering him?
Killing his own.
Yeah, because of killing his own kinsman, because of killing his own relatives, and the fear of actually losing his own relatives. Because of the fear, he was actually going through all these different conditions. But then that's where Krishna actually steps in. And then he, of course, Krishna begins speaking the whole Bhagavad Gita only after Arjuna surrenders. In the first chapter, do you know who speaks the major portion of the Bhagavad Gita? Arjuna. Krishna never speaks. Krishna waits, Krishna is just listening. Okay. We talk a lot about, empathetic listening, active listening, and so on and so forth. So many self-help books, they talk about, how you have to do good listening. But here Krishna as the Vishwa Guru, he's showing by his own example how actually he's a good listener. So he just listens. And then finally Arjuna comes to a point and says, even though I'm providing many arguments, I'm still very confused. So please instruct me. So that's where Krishna begins his instructions. Karpanya dosha pakata swabhava Prashyami tam dharma sammudha chetaha yasya shreyaham nishchita bruhitanme shishyasteham sadhimam tvam prapannam. So Krishna says, Arjuna says, now I've, very confused, about my duty, and so please advise me. Now I'm your disciple, so please instruct me. That's why Krishna begins.
Every chapter actually starts with Arjuna Vacha and then
Right.
Krishna Vacha. So every chapter is having a question and then answer.
That's correct. And I wouldn't say every chapter, but many chapters, yes. Many chapters. So how does Krishna respond to Arjuna's? So Arjuna is thinking, I will kill all of them, I lose all of them, and then Krishna actually he answers, that confusion of Arjuna by saying that even though you're going to fight with your kinsmen and relatives, actually they are not going to die. The death is only for their body. So Krishna actually is responding to Arjuna's confusion. Arjuna lists many reasons. Now Krishna is going to respond. So the first response of Krishna is, we don't die when the body dies. And then there is a series of verses where Krishna will talk about this. So that's the big difference. So am I the body or am I something higher? Am I the mind or am I something higher? So the Bhagavad Gita talks about how I'm actually a spirit soul. I'm categorically a different energy than this body and the mind. So there are two categories of energies the Gita introduces in different sections, the different chapters. One is the material energy, the other one is spiritual energy. So the self, the Atma, is actually categorically different than matter. So how it's different? Because matter is already dead. Like for example, this table. So the table, I can knock, I can, of course, generally I don't do it, but I can kick, right? I can actually do anything to the table, but the table will not react. The table will not respond because the table doesn't exhibit consciousness. Because the table is matter, so matter is dead. So the material energy is actually dead. It doesn't exhibit any consciousness. But I am a spiritual spark. I am a spirit soul. I am a spiritual energy and I exhibit consciousness. So Krishna defines, the real self as something that's different than the body. And of course, there are many other verses also, like how we live in this body, like how we live in an apartment, or we take a lease of an apartment, or we take a lease of a home, and it has a lease starting date and lease ending date, right? So similarly, we live in this body, but we are different than the body. We have a mind, but we are different than the mind. So Krishna very beautifully describes this. He describes his body as a yantra. He says, Ishvara sarva bhutani, hrideshu arjuna tishtati, brahmayan sarva bhutani, yantra rudani maya. He says, this body is like highly sophisticated machine made of material energy. And I'm seated in this machine made of material energy. So I'm different than this machine. It's a highly sophisticated biofuel machine. Right? So I am different than this machine. So this is the first lesson that Krishna gives Arjuna, that whenever you're fighting, of course people will die in battle, but even though they die, it's not that the person dies, it's only the death is only an experience for the body. The person, the real person, which is the Atma, the soul, doesn't die. And the soul actually moves on. So this is the first lesson that Krishna gives to Arjuna. So here is a beautiful verse. Anyone wants to read this verse? Yes.
Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be.
Right. So what is Krishna saying here? Never was there a time when I did not exist. What is Krishna talking about here?
We never existed.
Huh?
He always exists.
That he is omnipresent.
Yeah.
He's omnipresent.
Right. I mean, he is not only talking about himself, he is actually talking about the eternality of the soul. Yes, Adya.
So we were always there in the soul form, but at one point we just got put in the body, and then after that also we'll go back to the soul form.
Yeah, I mean it's almost correct. Yes.
None of us truly really die, only our bodies do.
Yeah, none of us truly die when our body dies. So basically what Krishna is saying here is we all exist eternally. So the principle that the body is temporary in nature, the body has a start date and an end date, it has an expiry date, but I am eternal being. So Krishna here is saying that never there was a time when, so Krishna is including all the kings also, and Krishna is including himself, and Krishna is including Arjuna also. We all existed in the past. We are all existing now in the present, and we will continue to exist in the future as well, because we are all eternal. As spiritual entities, as spirituals, of course Krishna is a different category spiritually. As spirit souls, we are all eternal. We don't die when the body dies. Yes, Manish.
Kurukshetra was not the first time when Arjun fought against Kauravas, right?
Right.
Virat Yudra also there
Right.
when he was against them. So
Right.
why the Gita comes at the time of Kurukshetra? Because in Virat Yudra there is no Krishna?
Yeah, that's a good question. So why this confusion comes at this time? Because Arjuna only had to defeat them. He didn't necessarily have to kill. But now suddenly, he's faced with this prospect that all these people are going to. In fact, Arjuna was not even in the Virat Yuddha. He was not even planning to fight. It was just the last minute decision to get up and fight and defend the Virat Desh. Basically, the prince who was actually there, whose name was Uttar Kumar. He was supposed to fight. So Arjuna was just driving the chariot. So there was no but at the last minute he started backing out, and then Arjuna has to step in to fight in that battle, and he didn't necessarily have to win. All he had to do is defend the kingdom. He just had to defeat them and defend the kingdom. But here, of course, he has to conquer. He has to conquer Hastinapur. And so it's a different scenario. Those two scenarios are very different. And he could understand that, yes, people are, there is going to be bloodshed. And of course, Duryodhana was not there. Of course, Duryodhana was there, but he didn't have direct enmity itself, in terms of, he was just helping the Virat Desh. He was not fighting for their own cause in that particular scenario. Yes, Guru.
But Bhagavad Gita was like, it's been preached only one time.
Right.
Because after the Mahabharata war, again Arjuna asked him to preach almost in the end of Mahabharata. At that time, Krishna says he cannot preach the same thing again, right?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure about that particular. I have to refer back.
Yeah,
to
because
the,
at that time you asked to teach. He said that like the Bhagavad Gita was taught when he united himself with the Brahman. That is the only time I can able to teach. But this time, because I cannot, because those things cannot be repeated again and again, and he told only short summary of that at the end of Mahabharata, right? Just before Swarga Aruna Parva, so you can able to see that.
Right.
So
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But sure, we can refer back and then we can comment on it. But I cannot comment on it because I don't know the source of that. Right. But Yeah, thanks for sharing. But I cannot really comment because I don't know much about
It says that
whether it
only
was summarized.
I-
But one thing I know from the Bhagavatam is Arjuna remembers all the instructions towards the end of
time he
Krishna.
got again confusion, saying that after something like 4 years after the Mahabharata war,
Right.
again he got confusion and he doesn't know what to do. He asked the Krishna to preach again. Because of my
Yeah,
old
could be.
age, I forgot everything, teach me
Mhm.
these things again.
Right.
Then he said that all the things I taught you because of my yoga with the Brahman,
Right.
those cannot be repeated again. So instead of that, I tell you a short summary. So that's what
Okay.
he said, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that information. So, anyway, I think the scenarios are different, between there and here. He was not personally involved, he was just defending, but here he is personally involved. That's what my understanding is. Any other, so Krishna here is talking about how we are eternal. The body is temporary, but we are eternal. And all including Krishna, everybody exists eternally. So that's the verse here. And then there's another verse, it's a beautiful verse. So can somebody read this particular verse? Anyone? Yes, Shruti.
As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change.
Right. So what do you see in this picture and what does this verse say?
Your soul doesn't die, it just
The soul doesn't die, yes.
goes on from
It just passes through, yes.
Cycle repeats.
The cycle repeats. Very nice. Yeah, there's the cycle of samsara, the cycle of birth and death. Actually, the soul passes through, one journey and then it goes on to the next journey. Yes. Anything else you see?
Takes one form to another form.
Yeah, it takes one form to another form. Beautiful. Yeah, not only the soul actually changes body at the time of death, but it also changes body even in one lifetime. Right? We were discussing yesterday, like Anirudh, where is your body when you are, 7 years old? Or, I can ask others, where is your body when you're 30 years old? For some people, where is the body, when you are 50? Or in the future, of course, more as we get older, our body keeps changing, right? Even in this lifetime, our actually body keeps changing, right? Even according to the science, after every 7 years, all the cells are replaced. 7 to 10 years, all the cells are replaced, and so it's a new body we have. So the body is actually going through changes rapidly, every day, every moment. But then there is an essence within us. There is a spiritual essence, the spiritual spark, which is unchanging. Like as they say, right? Even sometimes old people, they talk about, I'm a young at heart. I'm highly energetic at heart. So, I'm young at heart means what? The body is rapidly changing. It goes through these transformations, boyhood to youth to old age, and finally the body dies. But there is an aspect of us, especially when our awareness comes to a certain point, after youth, then we know that we don't change. We have the same essence inside. Even though externally so many things can be changing, we are still the same person inside. So what does it indicate? That indicates that there is something that's unchanging inside. Even though everything in this world is changing, there is something that's unchanging. So this is another characteristics. The difference between the body and the soul. The body is temporary in nature, but I am eternal. The body has a lot of transformation and changes, and ultimately it withers away, but I don't change. I am the unchanging aspect of my existence. And of course, there are other points also which we will discuss in the future sessions, especially about some reincarnation and the mechanism for reincarnation and so on and so forth.
So in a lifetime, when you learn something, we lost everything after death, right?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll just come to that. I'll just come to that in a few minutes. So Krishna says another beautiful verse that pervades the entire body. You should know to be indestructible. So we are the eternal aspect. So this is also a very important point. So what animates, if body is made of matter? We already discussed what is the characteristics of matter. Is matter dead or alive?
Yes.
The matter is dead. The matter is dead by its property. The matter is dead. So what makes a body appear alive?
Spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because of the presence of the soul. Because of the presence of the Atma. So that what makes or animates the body, makes the body appear alive. So then what is the difference between a living body and a dead body? Living, what is the difference?
And the soul.
Presence and absence of the soul. In fact, we may, the same body may be there, but then, we treat the person, when the person is there, we treat it in one way. When the person has left, we don't want to have any association with it. Of course, even though it's sad, it's it may be a moment of grief, but we don't want to have anything to do with the dead body, because there is no, the soul is not present. So that is the difference between. So what makes this body appear alive is the presence of the soul.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Isn't the soul changing also? Because we're talking about the body, it changes, age 7, whatever you're saying. But the soul also is changing. Otherwise, why are we sitting here today trying to gain that knowledge from you? Because we are changing. The soul also is looking for that knowledge, wanting to grasp and.
Sure. Hold on to that question. Let me
Yes.
just cover a few more slides, and then because
Yes.
even what is your name?
Prashant.
Prashant. Yeah, Prashant had a question, so I'll come back to your questions.
Thank you.
So regarding the previous slide, so
Uh-huh.
you said repeatedly matter is dead,
Right.
but many scripture says that a material world, that's the extended form of Shakti, and the
Right.
form of Durga, that
Right.
itself is super consciousness. So that means you're saying that whatever we call as dead, it's actually not dead, because only thing it does not respond does not mean it's actually dead, because there's nothing in the world which is dead actually. Because everything is Shakti, at least everything what we perceive,
Yes.
right?
So it's an inferior energy. It's not a conscious energy. You have to understand. There are two kinds of energies
Right.
that Krishna has. One is the inferior energy, which doesn't have any consciousness. But that doesn't mean that the energy is not under the control of everyone. Right? That doesn't mean that energy is actually, independently, organizing stuff. Of course, to make anything from the material energy, like for example, to create an iPhone, so there has to be a lot of intelligence behind that. Right? If you create a watch, there has to be a lot of intelligence behind it. And we can put together and create useful objects from this energy, but then there has to be an intelligence behind it. So similarly, the energy itself may not be conscious because it's an inferior form of energy, but that doesn't mean that there is no controller behind that energy. So there is a controller behind that energy, and that we will talk about in the coming sessions or future sessions.
I extend that question. Tree, the plant kingdom, if you see, that's a living thing, right? I mean, if you cut, there would be some.
Yes, that is a living thing. Yes.
So is that also having a soul?
Yes, that is also having a soul. In fact, there are 8.4 million species of life. Human species of life, animals, species of life that's in the water, plants. All these different species of life has a soul, and that's why they exhibit the symptoms of life.
So what is
So-
soul?
Yeah, that's what we will come to.
What about the robot?
Yeah, that's also we will come to in few slides. Yes.
Is there any end to soul at any time?
Is there an end to soul?
At any time?
No. There's no end to soul. There's only end to the body because we're eternal.
But they were saying if any desires in current birth it is not fulfilled, will take rebirth until it is. So when everything is accomplished, then what is the use? I mean,
Yeah, so that is so basically what is the question. Anyway, I'll come to the question you're asking is, what happens when all your desires are fulfilled, material desires. First of all, there will never be a time when all the material desires will be fulfilled. Is all your material desires fulfilled right now? So unless you take to the spiritual path, there will never be a time when all your material desires will be fulfilled. So when you take to the spiritual path and when you take to the spiritual practice and with spiritual knowledge, then what happens is it leads us to spiritual enlightenment. And the spiritual enlightenment, when we attain the spiritual enlightenment, is when actually all our material desires will stop. So that stage of spiritual enlightenment is what liberates us from the cycle of birth and death.
But the soul
So
still exists, right?
The soul still exists
Yeah.
because it's eternal.
Yeah.
But we will talk about in the future sessions what is the destination of such a soul. Who's fully self-realized, who's enlightened, who's on the spiritual platform, who's no more interested in any of the material, desires or activities. Then what is the destination of such a person? We'll discuss that in the coming sessions. Is that okay?
Are you equating soul with Atman?
Yes. The soul is Atman, yes.
So we saw just like the way body changes,
Mhm.
soul also change. I mean, if
I think.
if I die today, then the soul will.
So just to answer the question in brief, I don't want to take a lot of time. So just to answer in brief, it's not right now we are in a conditioned state of life. You can think about it as a computer program where the windows are minimized. So our soul's nature is right now minimized. In the sense, it's still is there in the background, but then our consciousness is projected externally into the body and the mind. So because we are covered, and that's what it's important to understand. What is our existence here? So we are the Atman, but we have two coverings according to the anatomy. So we have a multi-dimensional existence, you can say. So we are the Atman, and we are covered by two coverings, like how we are covered by a shirt and a coat. So similarly, we have two coverings. One is the subtle body, or you can call it as a mind body, and the other one is a gross body. So the gross body is the Stula Sharira, and the subtle body is the Sukshma Sharira, or the subtle, you can call it as a mind body. And both these bodies are made up of different elements. So because our consciousness is projected outside, what we are doing is we are learning knowledge to revive our own identity. It's not that the soul, we have lost in touch with ourselves. It's not that the soul has lost its potency, but our consciousness has drifted away from ourselves so far that we have lost the connection with ourselves. So what we are trying to do using the process of yoga and meditation is to actually connect again to our original identity, which is the identity that I am Atman. That's what we are trying to do. So what is the gross body is made of 5 elements. Can somebody say the Pancha Mahabhuta? Anybody say what are those? Earth, earth, fire, air, water, and ether. Bhumir apo analo vayu kam mano buddhir evacha ahankar etiyame binna prakriti ashtuta. So the gross elements, the gross body is made of these 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And then the subtle body, which we call as simplicity, you can call it as mind body. It is made of mind, intelligence, and false ego. So these are the 2 coverings we have. And an example is hardware, software, and a user, because we have to give an IT example, right? So what do you think the hardware represents here? The gross body. And the software? The subtle body. Or the mind body. The subtle body or the mind body. And the user is the soul. is the soul, represents the soul. Of course, it's an analogy. So the user actually uses the software to operate on the hardware. So similarly, we use the mind, which is actually can be compared to a software, because and then to operate on the physical body. So that's why mind is more powerful than our physical body, because we use the mind to operate on the physical body. And like how software can, of course, there's a picture of Windows here. You know how software can get bugs, the mind also can get the bugs and viruses, which can actually curtail its functioning or curtail its operations. So, but we will use this example to discuss more on other concepts also in the coming weeks. So, which is correct? Option 1 or option 2? Okay, anybody thinks option 1? Okay, good. Okay, which is correct? Option 1 or 2? Option 2, yes. Generally we say in language, I have I have an Atma, but actually I am the Atma. But it has to be the other way. I have a body. And who's the owner of the body? The Atma. The Atma, the self. Of course, to some extent, not fully. We cannot call ourselves the complete owner of the body also, because the body also behaves in its own way, right? Body also sometimes behaves in its own way. And who is the owner of the mind? I am the owner of the mind, or at least supposedly I am the owner of the mind, even though the mind may not cooperate with me all the time. Okay. So the car can, here of course, we talked about this, how the body appears alive, it's animated because of the presence of the Atma. So like how, for example, a vehicle, we also discussed about this body is like a vehicle. A vehicle outside, it can appear alive, right? The vehicle appears alive because of the presence of a driver. When the driver steps out, then the vehicle actually is dead, or it's dead matter. Now here is the characteristics of the body and the Atma. As we talked about, the body is made of the inferior energy. So Krishna says the inferior energy is the material energy which doesn't exhibit any consciousness. So the body is made of this inferior energy, but because of the presence of this higher energy or the spiritual energy of the Atma, the body appears alive. And the Atma is a source of consciousness. We'll discuss about consciousness. What is consciousness in the next few slides. So Atma is a source of consciousness. And the body is actually not conscious. Atma is eternal, permanent, but the body has a beginning and an end date. Atma is ever fresh, but the body actually grows and decays. Yes?
I have a question, may not be related. So, we have a soul, and
no, we are the soul.
We are the soul. But the emotions that we go through, is it part of the body or is it part of the soul? Emotions like happiness, sadness, all those kind of,
Right.
because that makes a change in the soul.
Yeah. So the experience, I would say, the experiencer is the soul.
Okay.
The experience of happiness and distress is the soul. But then so anyway, we will discuss this more in the coming sessions. Okay. But just to give you a brief answer, there is also, so something can happen physically, I can get hurt, right? And then, all those signals are actually sent to the brain, right? I'm just giving an example. And then the mind actually, which is interfacing with like the hardware, which is the brain, is actually consuming all those, emotions, consuming all those experiences. And then the soul, which is interfacing, with the mind, is actually experiencing all those emotions. So we are the experiencer. In short, the answer is we are the experiencer, but the events can happen either through the body or the mind. Because we closely connect with the body and the mind, we experience all that is happening to the body and the mind. So we are the experiencer. The mind, but mind is the seat of all emotions.
Okay. But that's not the soul.
That's not the soul.
No.
So
So the
suppose
mind
I don't want to study.
Yeah. So the thing is, I have to. I cannot cover this particular, I cannot go in depth, in this session, but we'll go in depth in the next session when we talk about the mind.
The
So when
next
we talk
session
about,
is all about mind.
yeah, what is the mind, what is the intellect and everything, we'll talk more about this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know this is a vortex actually, and it will completely take us away in a different direction. So, but I certainly, it's very good questions. So just park the questions for now. We will answer it in more detail next session.
Believe me, by next class or next session, I will have forgotten all of it.
No, we will help you to
Thank
remember
you.
it.
Thank you.
We will cover anyway because they are very fundamental aspects.
Yes, thank you.
So, these are the different characteristics between the body and the soul. And of course, the Bhagavad Gita talks about the inferior energy. What is this material energy made of? Water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, these constitute the material energy. And Krishna also says there is a superior energy of mind, which is the spiritual energy, which comprises the living entities. So these two energies are there. So here is a summary of what we discussed. The gross body is made of the 5 elements, gross elements. The subtle body is made of the 3 subtle elements, and our innate nature is Sat, Chit and Ananda. So you can repeat after me: Sat, which means eternity; Chit, it's full of knowledge and awareness; and Ananda. So our nature, our spiritual nature, our innate nature is Sat, Chit and Ananda, which is full, eternity, knowledge and bliss. That's why this world is actually such an incompatible place for us. Like a software, you have the problem of not being compatible, right? Like sometimes the hardware is not compatible with the software, and then there are so many issues. And then you have to, of course, if you work with the Windows laptop, you have to install some drivers and try to fix the problem. And there are so many incompatible issues that we can experience. So similarly, the soul, which has this nature, innate nature of being Sat, Chit and Ananda, is incompatible with this material world. Why? Why do you think it's incompatible with this material world? If you think about, these innate qualities, you can understand how it's incompatible. What is the nature of this world? Is it eternal or temporary?
Temporary.
Yeah, everything in this world is temporary, including our bodies. Everything is temporary. Right from our body, all the manifestations, even great empires, great kings, great kingdom, great, big skyscrapers, everything is temporary in this world. They come into existence, they stay for some time, and then they go out of existence. That's the nature of this world, that's the nature of this material energy. But my energy is, I'm eternal. So that's the first incompatibility. And the second is, everyone, all of us, we are born into ignorance in this world. In general, we are born into ignorance. I mean, what to speak of, even for material knowledge, Prashant was saying, every time, we are born into, we have to cultivate. All the material knowledge is lost, and we have to again regain that knowledge.
I just want to correct, I was talking about the spiritual knowledge.
Yeah, spiritual knowledge, just to give you a brief answer, spiritual knowledge is the spiritual progress that we make is not lost. It's not lost, and I'll explain to you why. But for that, we'll cover this in the future sessions. But the spiritual knowledge itself is not lost, or at least the spiritual growth that we gain is not lost. But we are born into ignorance, but we like to be full of awareness and knowledge, and that is the potence. That is the quality of Chit, and that's why. That's the second incompatibility. And the third incompatibility is, we talked about how the world is actually a place of, there are so many problems, right? It's a place of duality. But our nature is to be blissful. There's a place of duality where there is so many issues, there is so much problems, and it's a mixed bag of sometimes things go our way, many times things don't go our way. So it's a mixed bag. And that's the third incompatibility that we have in this world. And that's why this place is like, the soul living in this material world is like fish out of water. Like how fish, when fish is out of water, what do you think satisfies the fish? Some bangla? Some drinks? I mean, maybe, or maybe $1 million. The fish is out of water, you can give all those things to the fish, but, you can try to, you can try as much to be happy, but you can never be happy because it's out of place. What needs to be done is actually the fish actually has to be thrown back into the water, into its habitat, into the place where it can relate to. Then the fish can be happy. So the soul also feels very out of place in this world, and we will talk in the future sessions. What is that original place? What is the water is the comfortable place for fish. What is our comfortable place? So that we'll talk about in the coming sessions. So Krishna, beautiful. It's a beautiful verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Vashamshi Jarnani Yata Vihaya. You want to say the verse? It's 222. So Krishna compares this body to clothes. So as the person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up old and useless ones. So Krishna compares this body to a cloth, to a t-shirt, or a shirt, or a night dress, or whatever it is. Right? He compares this body to a dress, and how much, how casually, how just monotonously, without giving any attention, we just change dress, right? So similarly, Krishna compares this body to a dress. So when the dress is worn out, then what we do, we throw the dress and we get a new dress. And Krishna is telling, the same thing with the body. Just throw the body and get a... Of course, it's easier said than done, right? Because we are in the bodily concept of life, it's a very difficult concept to comprehend. But Krishna compares his body to a dress. And that's what people on the self-realized platform also, they do the same. They compare this body to a dress. Like if you, listen to the story of Socrates, he's a great philosopher. He's a great philosopher, and of course Socrates, he was on a self-realized platform and he was teaching these principles that's there in the Bhagavad Gita. He was teaching to his students, but then the state and the king didn't like it. They thought, this guy is gone, he's gone mad. So they actually arrested him and they, sentenced him to death because they didn't like what he was telling. So all the disciples, all the disciples were crying, because he was actually sentenced to death. They were going to feed him poison to die. And of course Socrates asked them, why are you crying? And then all the disciples says, you're going to die. You're going to, they're going to kill you. You're going to die. And this is so unjust. And then what Socrates replies? He was actually very calm. He replied, they cannot even see me. How can they kill me? So this is a person on a self. You can understand from that response. Of course, anybody who on the bodily platform will panic. Will be under severe stress, right? If you're going to, even if you think, death is a taboo. It's a topic that generally people avoid. Because it's not a very positive thing. People, it's true in the sense it's true for people in the bodily concept of life. But Socrates, made that reply because he was already on a spiritual platform. So he said, they cannot see me. So what did he indicate when he said they cannot even see me? How can they kill me? What did he indicate? The soul. So he was on the spiritual platform. So he considered, not a big deal. He didn't make it a big deal. But because he was on the spiritual platform. And Krishna is also saying here, it's just a cloth. Now try realizing that actually. Next time you go to, get an injection.
So why does a soul need a body if it's
it's a very good question, Lekha. It's a very, very good question. Why does the soul needs a body? In short, the answer is because we have material attachments. we have material desires, and to like to interact in this material world, to fulfill our desires in the material realm, we need the material body to interact with these energies. So as long as we have material attachments and material desires, the soul will have to take birth again and again and have a body to try to fulfill those desires and to basically deal with those attachments.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Is it a desire of soul or a body?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You can wait till next session. It's a very good question.
So, from your answer, it seems like soul is changing its characteristics. Am I hearing it correctly? If so, like, what among the three characteristics is actually changing?
So it's not changing; it's there already. It's just that we are reviving that original nature of the soul.
But you're saying
So through the spiritual process, we are reviving that nature is there. But right now, we are so disconnected from our original spiritual nature that we don't experience any of it.
Yeah, those are the three things that.
Satchit and Ananda, right? So that's the soul's nature. That's the innate nature of the soul. But we are so disconnected from our original nature that we don't observe any of those things.
You also mentioned.
But it's still there.
Yeah. You also mentioned that soul has this materialistic connection. So what?
Right. Soul has. So it's not. The soul can be influenced, and the soul can be influenced to actually, to pursue a material, desire, to pursue material nature. Again, we will talk about it more. Now, who's that influencer? So that's the influence is, by the material energy itself, which works, even though in unconscious, it works under Ishvara, the supreme controller. Now there is an agency, and the agency is the mind. So the mind is an inside agent of Maya. So the mind can actually allure us with these material desires, and it can tempt the soul to pursue all these different goals. The soul is, even though the soul, the soul has these innate qualities, but the soul sometimes misses, to the point, and then it can get allured or influenced by the mind. And many times that's what happens. We can see, we get pushed and pulled by the senses in the mind, and we get influenced by the demands of the senses in the mind. And the soul can get easily influenced to pursue a particular path by the demands of the mind and the senses. And so it can, again, we will discuss all these things. I mean, we can, because there's a beautiful analogy which discusses all these things.
Yes.
So I cannot, I cannot take, session 3 right now. So I have to, cut. I mean, I really appreciate all your enthusiasm, but the thing is, if we go down that path, right, then we'll not be able to cover today's session. I'll just take Guru's comment, but I will not elaborate on these points. We'll elaborate on these points in the next session.
Isn't it better to say that like an jiva, that means like the subtle bodies that's been changing, Atman is being revived. That's the proper way to put it through.
Yeah, that's in essence what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
When does the soul enter a body?
When does the soul enter a body? Yeah, so basically, we saw that cycle, the samsara cycle, the cycle of birth and death. So when does a soul enter the body? When this body, like for example, when do you get a new laptop?
The old one is.
Yeah, when the old one is dead, when it's not working, right? You get a new laptop, right? And then what do you do after you get a new laptop?
The software and all.
Yeah, if you have the backup of the software, so you're all very smart. So if you really have the backup of the software, then what do? You get a new hardware, and then you load the new software, and then you boot it up, right? Now, when you boot it up in the new computer, it exactly the desktop looks exactly like how you left off in the previous computer, the old computer, right? So when does we take on a new body? When the old hardware dies. When the body becomes uninhabitable, it is actually it's crashing. When the hardware dies, then we get a new hardware, and then we load the software. So similarly, when the body dies, when it's uninhabitable, sometimes some apartments are so old and they're crumbling that nobody can inhabit in it. Then they will basically break down the whole apartment and then build a new building. So similarly, when the body becomes uninhabitable, then the soul actually moves on to the next body.
So can the soul be good and bad? Like there are some evil souls.
Yeah, so we will cover that in the next session. A good question, very good question. So we will cover all these questions. Many of these questions it will be automatically answered when we go through next session. Yes.
I mean, you were giving this when the body becomes old, we'll search for the new bodies.
Right. Not we will search. The material nature will arrange it for us.
Okay. But unfortunately, some kids are dying.
Right.
So how that happens?
Yeah,
Why
we'll
that-
talk.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, again, nobody can predict when, what is old age.
Yes.
That's it cannot really be defined by because death can come for anyone at any time. It's not that death, gives you a first notice, first eviction notice, and then second eviction notice. So death is not going to give us. I mean, maybe for some people, by the arrangement of by arrangement of their own karma, they may get a notice. But for many people, there is no notice. So nobody can say, what time or what point we will die. But why that phenomenon happens, we'll discuss more in the concept of karma when we cover the topic of karma. Yes.
Body needs some basic food.
Right.
So what basic requirements for like soul to function?
Yeah, very good question. Very good question. In fact, the nourishment of the soul is actually has to come from. The nourishment as the soul has to come from a spiritual level, because we are spiritual. Nourishment has to come from a spiritual platform. Like how does the energy for this light bulb is coming? Where is it coming from? It's coming from the electric current. And where is the electric current coming from?
It's being generated from
PNG, right? It's coming from the powerhouse. It's coming from the central powerhouse. What is that?
Pole. Coming from the pole.
Yeah, coming from the pole, which is connected to the energy source. Right? It's coming from an energy source, and that's what is actually powering this light. It's giving energy to the light. So similarly, the soul can also be nourished when we connect with our source. Like how this bulb, when it connects to that power source, it gets its energy and nourishment. So similarly, when we connect to the Supreme, to our divine source, then we get nourished and we get energized. And one of the powerful ways by which we can connect to that original source is through the chanting of the mantra, chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We connect to our divine source, to the Supreme, through which we get our nourishment and we get our energy. Like how does a leaf get energy? Through the sunlight. But then there are other things also, right? Can a leaf get sunlight? I mean, but the leaf can it survive if it plucked away from a tree? No. How does this finger get energy?
It is connected with the body.
It's connected with the body and it's connected with the body and it cooperates with the body, and then when it feeds the body, it's basically getting that energy from the body. From the stomach digests the food, and then it basically gets the energy. It gets nourishment from the body because it's connected to the body. Similarly, as a leaf, as is part of the body, it gets nourishment because it's connected to its source or earth or root. The leaf is connected to the root, to the tree and to the root. That's why it's actually getting that nourishment. So similarly, when we are connected to our root, when we are connected to our source, then we get nourished. And one of the powerful ways by which we can connect is through spiritual sound vibrations. Through the spiritual sound, especially the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we can connect to our divine source and we can nourish ourselves, the soul.
Aren't we already connected? Everybody is already connected because using the Atman. Paramatman stays inside the soul, right?
Yes, you can say yes, we are connected, but we are not we don't have that awareness. Like for example, rain is rain is falling everywhere. When it rains, it falls everywhere. But then the soil which is fertile, it can absorb the rain, and then it can actually, the plants can grow from the soil, right? But rocks, rain falls on the rock also, but then the rocks cannot absorb that rain. So similarly, yes, that's true. We are all connected, but we are now forgotten that connection. We are not aware of that connection. So we have to revive that awareness of that connection.
Does that mean soul is dead?
No, soul is not dead. Soul is eternal.
I mean,
It's
you
alive.
said the source of the soul is spiritual.
Right.
Right. If you're not connected.
Yes, in the sense I would say it's not dead, but we are undernourished. like that bird, no, the parrot. It's like almost, it's like dying. So we are undernourished. Soul it can never die, but we are undernourished. It's like that parrot in that picture. Is that okay?
Yeah.
But when we connect with our divine source, then we get energized and we get fully empowered. Now that's what Arjuna will experience. So Arjuna was like the bird which was almost lifeless. That is the Arjuna's condition at the beginning of the battle. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, that is Arjuna's condition. But then after Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, and when he got connected with the divine source, he got clarity, he got knowledge, he got a purpose. Then he became fully enlivened. And then he says, yes, Krishna, I am ready to fight according to your instructions. He was fully motivated. Previously, he was completely demotivated. And after the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, Arjuna was fully motivated. So that's because of the connection with the Paramatma or Krishna there. So one can become fully nourished when we connect with our divine source of the Paramatma.
Can I ask a question? So with Arjuna now, he is killing all his relatives, right?
Right.
Now doesn't that become his karma?
Yeah, in fact he says that as one of the reasons, and Krishna refused that argument.
Oh.
Yeah, Krishna refutes all his argument. He says one of the reasons he will not fight is because he fears sinful reactions that may come because of performing his duty. But Krishna says no, sinful reactions will come when you don't perform your duty.
But that's a conflict, right?
That's a conflict, and that's why Arjuna was confused. And in fact, it's a conflict between two. In fact, it's easier to resolve a conflict when it's actually conflict between right and wrong. If it's black and white. Like for example, that's why Arjuna was very confused, because it's not conflict between what is right and what's wrong. It's the conflict between two right. So on one side was the Kshatriya dharma, which is also right, which is value. It's good value to have, one being dutiful. On the other side was his Kula dharma. To protect his family members is also his dharma. So to perform his duty is dharma. To protect his family members is dharma. Now which dharma to follow?
So two negatives make a positive?
No, it's two positives. It's not two negatives.
Sorry.
No, but Krishna reconciles that by understanding, the priorities of dharma. Like, contemporary situation you can see, I was discussing, I think yesterday, a cop actually driving on a car, and then he's on his, what do you call that? Rounds. He's on his rounds, and suddenly he sees, his son or daughter, doing some illegal activity while doing on the rounds in the neighborhood. Now, what should he do? What should he do then? What is the right thing to do then? So that's why it says, dharma, it's not so easy to understand. It's complex actually. So Arjuna is actually going through the same situation. What is the right thing to do here? And that's why he's asking Krishna, I'm totally confused now. It seems that I have to protect my family. At the same time, it seems that there is a call for my duty. What is the right thing to do here? So dharma is, that's why it's very complicated. Sometimes the choices can be very simple, but dharma can get very, very complex. That's why it says dharma is not so easy to understand, but dharma can be understood, from a person who is a Mahajan. He can give us the direction of what is the real dharma in different situations. Because what is, generally, we know that, lying is bad, right? lying is bad. It's not correct. It's not to lie is not a righteous activity. It's not a virtuous activity. But is that true in all circumstances?
No.
No, it really depends on circumstance. Let's say, some person is actually, he's being chased by some gundas, and then he comes and then he goes and hides behind a tree or a car, and then he says, please don't, they're coming to kill me or coming to harm me. Please don't, disclose my location. The thieves come, the gundas come and ask you, hey, did you see a person running here? Where did he go? No, what do you have to do? Do you lie? But then lying is bad. How do you tell the truth? Truth means he will get, he will get implicated actually. The person will, you're putting the person to harm. So dharma is not so easy to understand. So that's why Arjuna is confused. That's why I'm saying Arjuna is very qualified. He's so learned, he's so knowledgeable, he's so skilled, but he becomes confused because it's a conflict between two right. And so Krishna will now clarify Arjuna by seeing which takes a higher priority by ordering.
So to put it other way, selfish action can create a karma. Non-selfish action wouldn't create a karma. Anything which is not doing for self, because karma created on the subtle body. So if he's not acting for himself,
correct. No, that's what Krishna will talk about in the principles of karma yoga and other places. Yes, that's what the whole concept of karma yoga is. Anyway, so is that okay?
Thank you so much.
So again, the soul, because it's a categorically different energy, will stop. I think I still have quite a few slides. Can I take 5 more minutes and then we can, yeah.
Let's finish it.
Let's finish it? Yeah. How many of you vote for let's finish it?
All of us.
All of us.
Decision made.
Yeah. I'll just take 5 to 10 minutes and then I'll try to complete it.
As long as you don't hear kids screaming.
No, somebody said all of us, but I don't want to take it really, that I didn't see all of them raising their hands. So I don't want to I don't want to see that it's a vote from everybody. So the soul can never be affected by any of the material elements because it's a categorically different energy. It's a spiritual energy, so it cannot be cut into pieces. It cannot be destroyed by weapon. It cannot be moistened by water. It cannot be burned by fire, or it cannot be withered by the wind because it's a spiritual element. So can we see the soul? This is a very famous question. Can we see the soul? Of course we cannot. We cannot really see the soul because we cannot see, because it's a categorically different energy. We cannot use our gross material senses to try to see the soul. It's not possible because it's a different energy. Now the question is, can you see butter in the milk? No. But we know butter comes from the milk. But can you see butter in the milk? No. Can you see sesame oil in sesame seeds? No. Can you see rose essence in rose flower? No. But if you apply a process on the rose petals, and then similarly if you apply a process on the milk and follow a process, then you can actually get the essence, which is the butter. If you apply a process on the sesame seeds, go through a process, then you can get the sesame oil. So similarly, we cannot see the soul with our gross senses, but when we apply a process on ourselves, so we are the objects of experiment here. So when we apply a process, when you apply the knowledge and application of the process along with the practice, then what happens is, the end product is, we'll be able to experience, our true self or our true nature, which is the soul for ourselves. So how to perceive, how do we perceive that the Atma exists? Because intuition, perceiving by intuition, we understand, we talked about this, as you see an axe, somebody, unfortunately, somebody dies, what do we say? He's gone or she is gone, but the body is right there with the nose, eyes, all the features, at least for a few hours, it's intact, but who is gone? Soul is gone. So intuitively we understand. We use this language, intuitively understand
Yes.
that the soul is gone. The person is gone. The person is gone. And then, let's say, the person is, you see an accident on the road, and it's a Porsche, right? It's a Porsche. Porsche. Okay. Sorry. How do you spell it?
P-O-R-S-C-H.
Right, but how do you, Porsche? Pronounce it? Porsche.
The E is
Okay.
silent a little bit. Porsche.
Porsche. Okay.
The
So-
sh is there, the E sound is there, but it's very subtle.
It's very subtle. Porsche.
Porsche.
So you see suddenly, somebody has gotten in an accident. The car is Porsche, and then the car is fully damaged, or it's damaged, and of course the person is also hurt. What will you salvage, or who do you, what will you save first? The person. Why? I mean, Porsche is, if you really think of all the material elements, if you really think of all the, material elements or the organs and so on and so forth, Porsche may be more expensive, right?
Right.
We should actually try to save the Porsche or salvage the Porsche first instead of the person. But we don't do that because we intuitively understand there's something valuable inside that person. Intuitively understand that this person has to be saved because something more valuable is inside the person. And more valuable, what is that more valuable thing? The soul, the spiritual energy, the spiritual spark, the spiritual essence. That's not Porsche, right?
No.
So the body is there, so who is gone? The soul is gone. And now we can also understand the Atma by inference, So we don't want to die. Even though if we are just made of the material elements, every material thing in this world, it is going to basically come into manifestation and go out of existence at some point. So we are just this material body. Why is that none of us wants to die? We're just this material body. Why is that none of us wants to die? Because we are the soul, and the soul is eternal. Soul has no death. That's why we don't want to die. We resist death. Why? Because we are eternal. And so the same thing with the other things. We don't like ignorance. Why we don't like ignorance? The body is born of ignorance. Because we are full of knowledge. And the same thing, we don't like miseries. We don't like problems in life because we are blissful in nature. So we can understand intuitively all these things, because we are eternal nature, we don't like to die. So we can ask this question: why, no living entity likes to die? Because it's contrary to it's contradicting its very element. We don't like to die because we don't die. Simple. We don't like to be unhappy because we are happy by nature. And we don't like ignorance or being born into ignorance because we're full of knowledge. So these things we can infer the nature of the soul by these things. And then sometimes the cloud covers the sun, but still we know the sun is there. How do we know the sun is there? Because of the presence of sunlight. So similarly, we know a living entity has the Atma because of the presence of consciousness. And what is consciousness? Now, what is consciousness? So let's say two, one is a person and one is a robot, and both are sitting on a hill and watching a sunset. Right? Now, can both of them detect sunset? Yeah, both of them a person can detect, what is a sunset. Can a robot detect what is a sunset?
Yeah.
Yes, the robot can, maybe can print out, this is a sunset, this is a sunset, this is a sunset, right? But then what is the difference? Can the person not only detects that this is a sunset, but he experiences joy, he experiences the awe, the beauty of that sunset. He experiences many things while seeing that sunset. But can a robot experience it? No, it cannot experience it. It can detect a sunset, but it cannot experience the sunset. So consciousness, what are the symptoms of consciousness? The symptoms of consciousness is thinking, feeling, willing, all the emotions we have, desires we have, experiences we have, happiness we experience, the distress we experience, all these things are actually symptoms of a conscious being. Thinking, feeling, willing, emotions, desires, satisfaction, all these different aspects that we come across in our lives are actually symptoms of consciousness. Only a living person can exhibit all these different consciousness.
That's body, right? Not Atma.
No, it's Atma. Of course, all these, all these, we are interacting with the mind and the body, but it's the Atma which is experiencing all these things. It's the Atma which is the experiencer of happiness or suffering. So we are experiencing that. But the agency of that experience can come through the body or the mind.
So the Atma can only experience all those if you have a body.
The Atma, of course, if you're interacting with the body, whatever the body goes through, the Atma also experiences with the body.
So if there's no body, then the Atma is not going to experience.
Yes, if there is no body, of course, if there is no, one thing I just want to quickly, which we will discuss in the future sessions, is that even though during the time of death, the physical body, disintegrates, and the soul leaves the physical body, the mind still goes along with the soul. The mind does not die. When the physical body dies, this we will discuss in the next session. The mind does not die when the physical body dies. So that is the catch. But anyway, we will discuss it further in the next sessions. So wherever you see the presence of consciousness, wherever you see this, feelings, emotions, thinking, and then, willing, desires, all these things, wherever you see, the Atma is there. Yeah. So you can also experience, through direct perception. Krishna says one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. So one can also experience this by knowledge and practice. One can realize the true essence by knowledge and practice. Anyway, there are other empirical evidences that we have. Near that experiences, Dr. Michael Sabam, he was a cardiologist. He has recorded more than 150 cases of near that experiences where people are unconscious in operation theaters. Maybe they are in a shock. They are almost dying, or they are given anesthesia and so on and so forth. But they know all the details that has gone in the operation theater because of near that experience or out of body experiences. So it's a well recorded phenomenon. And then, you can see, the subtle body floating here. And then, so the person, even though unconscious, they can recollect all the details of what happened in the operation theater, even though they are physically unconscious. So, Dr. Michael Sabam, he's a cardiologist, he's recorded so many cases of people remembering or recollecting these out-of-body experiences. And then there is Dr. Ian Stevenson. He's recorded more than 2,000 cases of kids exhibiting past life memories. He's late. He's no more. He was a professor at the University of Virginia, and he's extensively investigated about 2,000 cases of spontaneous past life memories in small children. And then, of course, this is the final. So we are, this is a material viewpoint where the body is just made of matter, but the spiritual viewpoint is we are not the material body, but we are actually spirit soul encaged in this material body. Anyway, that's the summary. We are not our bodies, we are the Atma within. Yeah. Can Google solve death? No, it cannot. But can Bhagavad Gita solve death? Yes, it can. So what is coming next? The next session is called Decision Making Framework. So this is where we talk about our inner realm. We talk about the mind. What is the mind? What is the function of the mind? What is the intelligence? What is the false ego? How does everything interplay and work together? And how can we train the mind to be a friend? So this is our next session. Any final comments or questions? I know you're all hungry, so I don't want to, put more, delay between you and the food. Shyam, Prabhu, you want to give some logistical announcements. So thank you all for coming to today's session, and
I think we already asked lot of questions, so
enjoy your dinner peacefully. So thank you again for your kind attention, and thank you for coming today.
thank you.
As we have many of these sessions like this, and sitting there, I was thinking the quality of questions that were coming in these sessions, and especially from the audience, all of you, they're very profound and very deep. So I was really appreciating the contributions, the type of questions and the comments that people are making. So thank you very much. Please give a round of applause for yourself first. And I was also appreciating how Sundaranand Prabhu is very focused on what he wants to cover, but at the same time very compassionate that he does want to give you a brief answer. And I'm sure as we go along into the third session, many more things will become much more clearer. I think all of us coming from Indian background, we understand, I'm not this body. We have seen, but many of us struggle with this concept, I'm not the mind. What's the difference between the mind and the soul? Where does the desires come? Where does the emotions come from? Does the soul have anger, evil souls, good souls, like that? So then the third session, which we will have not this coming weekend, but the following weekend.
Coming weekend is a
long weekend. But it's not the wrong weekend for spirituality. No? So we will actually have a different session. We will still have the gathering here. We do want the vibration to continue. So we will have a special Janmashtami session next Saturday. So because Janmashtami is coming up 3 days or 4 days after, so we can all prepare our consciousness for Janmashtami. So we'll have that. But I was thinking as all of you were asking these questions, the way Sundaranand Prabhu was encouraging all of us to think deeply, ask these questions, but also the way he was covering different subject matters, I was really impressed, and I could see he is a sthita prajna. He was undisturbed the way people were asking questions. So I really want to thank him for giving us an example while also giving us the knowledge. So please give a round of applause for Sundaranand. Of course, all of us are able to peacefully sit here because of two things. One is our kids are taken care, and second is our dinner is also taken care. So I do want to take this opportunity to thank the teachers. Shyam Kumari is taking care of the younger kids, Pramila Mataji is taking care of the older kids, and I also want to thank Balmukund Prabhu, Manideep and Ramesh for some of the arrangements. Rahul is also here and he also helped many arrangements, so I want to thank them. So let's give them a thank you. Srinivas and Sumit are also there, so thank you very much. I also want to mention Dheeraj, I don't see where is Dheeraj and Mugdha also got us wonderful samosas. So thank you very much for. I was telling him the opportunity to serve is actually a privilege. So it's like so you get bonus. So thank you for volunteering. So as usual, we will go through the main door. We will take our dinner plates. We need a couple of volunteers to help fold up these, so you can come back, sit here. And then I think kids have already gone and taken. So please do ensure kids don't make too much noise and they are taken care nicely as well. And so one last and important announcement which I alluded to earlier is next Saturday we will have Janmashtami special class. We will have Janmashtami special kirtan and Janmashtami special dinner. We will have a lot more arrangements next weekend. So please don't miss that. Even though the topic is going to be different.